Teresa, are we on? We live? We're good? Up. I'll wait for the high sign. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, welcome. Thank you for joining us this evening. My name is Danny Reed. I'm the Director of Cultural Arts and Adult Programming here at the Miami Beach JCC. And I want to welcome everyone who's here in person and live to a very, very special evening. Benito, your art for the last few weeks has graced our hallways and bringing joy and light to us and to everybody that has visited the JCC. So I want to thank you. We're here to find out and crack open the safe, as it were. We're here to find out a little bit more about you and about your art and what has inspired you to create this wonderful work, and a little bit more about your background and your career. And we have with us today, who's going to be the safe cracker, I guess we could say, Mindy Solomon. Mindy Solomon of Mindy Solomon Gallery, an art critic, an art aficionado, an art specialist, and a welcome member of the community. So with that, let us begin.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you. Can everyone hear me? Is this working? Yes. Well, I'm glad to be here, and I'm glad to be with Benito, and welcome to everybody. When I was a kid, we used to say, hello, everyone in TV land, in front of our little TV with our rabbit ears. But it's wonderful to have the opportunity to talk about this exhibition. And I wanted to just speak for a moment before we get into it about how I met Ariella and Benito. And it really is germane to the power of art, because Ariella and Benito came to my gallery one Sunday during one of our Sunday progressive art brunch events, and we just immediately hit it off. Through looking at work and talking about work, we discovered some very interesting shared life experiences, and just had a real affection for each other that was almost immediate. And, you know, it really speaks to the power of art. And ironically, before the event began this evening, we had an experience with a visitor to the JCC that looked at one of your works and had, I would say, a negative reaction to it, which is not necessarily a bad thing, but of course we were a bit perplexed by the way that he managed his feelings.
Absolutely.
If he were in preschool, he'd be in timeout for a while, I think. But you know, it got our blood going.
It did. It was a good thing to come in here and stay pumped, and it's like one of my favorite episodes of West Wing when Mrs. President Bartlett's going out to give a debate, and she said, well, she hasn't really helped him so much during the time for his preparation, but he said, then she goes up to him and she cuts his tie off, and then he has to scramble and get another tie, so he goes out with a lot of energy. So here we are.
That always
so
helps.
I'm a big West Wing fan. So.
Well, and speaking of energy,
yes.
I mean, if any of you have had the opportunity to visit this exhibition, which I really truly hope you do, it's the first time in my experience since we started the gallery program that we actually utilized the entire length of the corridor, and it's arresting to come into the space from the beginning of the hallway, and then to experience the vision of all of the works down to the computer.
So one of the
screen.
things that I wanted to do, because I feel like I've been such a bridezilla regarding this show, this is the Joy of Life show, but it's really the Joy of Life project, which involves Dance of the Drawing and the Lincoln Road 500 and this exhibition. And I had these ideas about doing all of these projects, And when Mindy, when we came to visit your gallery, it wasn't then, it was months later.
Yeah.
We got to know each other a little bit more, and you're on the board here, and you suggested to the board that maybe I would be a good candidate to show here. And like one thing that I haven't been doing, because I've been such a bridezilla throughout this entire program, and it's not really my nature, but I just feel I'm a 60-year-old artist who's starting to have a breakout moment. I guess I'm overselling that a little bit. And it's so important to be thankful, and I really haven't thanked you publicly for doing that. And throughout the entire experience, I had a team of over 30 people, and I haven't really thanked all of them, enough or at all publicly. And, obviously Karen Sepsenwall and Karen Boyer and Danny, thank you so much for allowing me to participate. And when you had the opportunity to show, I knew that I really wanted to transform this space. This is a tough space, but it's also not a tough space. I gave myself a challenge, and you all just let me run with it, and I really appreciated the rope that you gave me, so thank you to all of you. And
thank you.
Yes.
Because you put a lot of energy into it. But I mean, I wanted to talk. There's a lot of things that I kind of want to talk about in terms of, but I want to start at the beginning, which is your story, before we get into the more spiritual and political aspects of the work. So you have Miami roots.
I do.
And you tell us how you came to be in Miami.
When I was 5 years old, on I believe it was October 5th of 1966, I came over on the Freedom flights from Cuba. I was 5 years old. I do remember the trip, and I have some earlier memories, and I lived here for what seemed my entire life till I was 20, and I went to art school, and I participated. I went to all of the local schools here. Beach High was my high school, and involved with a lot of the religious organizations and youth groups, and I got involved with the art scene here through Miami-Dade Community College North with Robert Thiele and Salvatore La Rosa and a couple of other people there, and I've studied with some great people like Roberto Martinez, who was an outstanding drawing professor that I studied with in Vizcaya way back when. But I just felt like I needed to get out. Like I knew when I became an artist that I needed to see art and be around art. But Miami is what really launched me, and I should be very thankful for the opportunity that I met the right people. And now it's a coming home. We're coming home. My Ariella, my best friend, my confidant. I am her husband. Mm-hmm. She wanted to come here to Florida. For the climate, and we think that we would ride out COVID, and it has been so easy to come back, partly because of meeting you and other people that have made that amazing experience. I feel so totally connected.
Yeah, well, and you're so connectable.
Thank you.
So I wanted to, on that note, I mean, I've always felt like one of the things that we need to kind of reaffirm to the global art world is how the Miami experience informs the art and has its own kind of aesthetic value. And I definitely see that sort of frenzied energy in your work. So if we can kind of look at the first image, which is one of my favorite in the show, and by the way, prior to this evening, I wrote a check to Benito and purchased one of the paintings in the exhibition. So I'm very excited to be the proud owner for my collection. But this painting is called The Family, and as I said, it's one of my favorite works in the show. It's so painterly, and it just has so much power. And maybe you can talk about some of the characters in this image. Are there some references here?
Many references. So there's the reference of the figure on the left side. There's several that come in, and that is Cézanne's Bather that's hanging in the MoMA. And I did a lot of research on each figure. The background, actually, the overall painting is inspired by Picasso's painting, The Pipes of Pan, where he has two figures, one sitting and one standing. I think he did it in the 20 of, the inspiration of that was, some friends that he had back then. The name is escaping me. So the way that the background is set up and the figure on the left, that was kind of like my initial inspiration in terms of the setup, right? And also when I was researching the figure of the bather, I also realized I came across some Roman sculptures that are in the Louvre that I'm sure Cézanne saw, and it was the exact model. I had broken down that figure geometrically. It was the exact same sculpture that Cézanne saw when he was inspired to do this painting. The head comes from a Greek coin. When I was doing the drawing, my son Moshe, who's a confidant and who knows my work more than anyone, he knows my work as equal as Ariella does, would see my work develop, and he came in and he saw the head and he said, "Oh, that looks like a Greek coin." And I said, "Exactly." And then I did my research, and that happened. The figure on the figures on the right are inspired by Renaissance painting of Venezio Domenicano of the Madonna and Child. But there was a lot of different references. I did a lot of research in finding the right position of the figures. I knew what I wanted, and then I took that influence and I made it my own. And then I'm sort of freestyling when it comes to how I handle the painting of the colors and how I put the brush, how the paint down. And I would say ever since I did this painting, every painting in some way is a reaction to this painting.
Okay. I mean, it's definitely, I really like the way that you use color to also sort of inform the musculature, but at
Right.
the same time, there's an abstraction to the way that you break up the form.
Also, that painting is painted very differently when every single section. The figure is painted one way, and then I was following the, what is that, circular, the golden ratio, in terms of, I've been looking for the golden ratio ever since we visited the Getty Museum in California a couple months ago, and I just started to see it, and I realized that I painted, that the golden ratio is in this painting, and the way that I painted it is that same way. I painted, basically the back, and then I painted the figure from the bottom up, and then I came down and I painted the mother from top down, and then I came up and I painted the baby. So this painting, it has it in there, but the DNA, the blood of this painting is, I feel like it has that classical form of structure which it was created by I believe the Greeks to come up with a concept to create synthetic beauty in art.
Thank you for that
No problem.
explanation. I'm just going to move through. I mean, there's a lot of work in the show,
Yes.
and they're all wonderful, but for the sake of time, I'm just going to kind of move
I talk
through.
too much, and I
No,
also
no,
go
not
off on
at all.
tangents.
No.
My goal is to tell long, boring stories that go on forever that people want to listen to, and you'll
I'm
have
gonna
to
just sort
feel
of-
free to jump in.
Okay, so let's talk about the self-portrait, because when we were putting, when I got the text, which was basically like an SOS, we got a lot of stuff here, help, and coming in and trying to assist in the curation of how we lay out the work.
Yes.
And, we decided to put the self-portrait really at the front of the exhibition. And I think that it was a wonderful way to just say, okay, this is my brain, this is my story. So I wanted to draw attention to
Sure.
that. And I don't know if you want to say anything about the portrait
Sure.
or the kind of mood that you're conveying in that.
So I was trying to smile, because every time I draw myself, Ariella says I don't smile, but I'm really looking at myself intensely in the mirror. Sometimes I'll draw when I do The Artist in Me, which is part of another series that's not here and it's kind of ongoing. I do those from photographs, but this is like me looking at myself in the mirror. And like I just feel sometimes I want to do classical painter or artist things. I want to paint a landscape. I want to paint a still life. I want to paint a self-portrait. I want to see how I do it compared to, you know, my heroes in art. And this was during the early parts of COVID. And I had already started an early painting day, and I knew in the evening after dinner I was going to paint a self-portrait. And, you know, I finished it in a couple of days. And I just wanted to paint myself with a hat because that's my favorite hat. And I haven't worn it because I sort of gave it a good beating. And I wanted to paint myself, you know, with a color that I think Ariella likes. You know, and I'm also very, you know, sensitive to that color. I really like it a lot. The background, I was looking at Van Gogh, and I wanted to be sensitive of painting the background, kind of inspired by Van Gogh. And when I'm looking at the colors of, let's say, the nose and the purple, I saw those colors. I really see those colors. And sometimes when I'm working on a painting that's more non-objective, I don't do anything until the painting tells me what to do. I sometimes do it because it's not talking to me, but it's like busy work, and most chances I'm going to paint over it. So I was really just trying to paint what I saw. And when I see this painting, it also reminds me of what my dad looked like. You know, other people that I need to be thankful for, my parents who are no longer with us. And it's just, you know, I just want to be very thankful for, you know, the moments and the people that have brought me here, you know, and I think about them constantly.
Well, now I'm going to look at you and see purple and green and red all the time.
Yes. I see some nice purples and magentas on your face, Mindy.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't think about that, but so I'm just, as I said, I'm gonna just kind of move through some of the series, and hopefully those that are watching via Zoom can appreciate, you know, the movement and the color and the energy of the work. This one's particularly strong, I think. And you do use, so first of all, you definitely do the kind of dancing figures. We see that thematically.
Yes.
And also I have seen the bird appear. So what is the symbolism of the bird?
I think that I associate it to a soul. I associate it to being free. I associate it to having empathy with other people, and you know, and also I had a bird in my studio in Williamsburg when I got out of college. Her name was Frida, and I drew her and painted her a lot. Frida Kahlo is one of my favorite artists. She's one of my heroes. And my birds show up, and for many years I was doing a series of angel paintings in the 80s, and the angel paintings were had a bird head, and it had the body of a woman. But that's a whole nother thing. I'm going to get down that hole if you don't stop me here, right? Okay. So for me, it's just a sense of freedom and a sense of soul that I see it. And this painting was painted in Israel, like the painting that you bought. I'm very sensitive to the studios that I paint things in. Everywhere I go, I bring a traveling studio with me. It was inspired by a drawing that I did on the plane on the way over, and it just caught me because it was so atypical of me, and I, want to go where the feeling is. I want to follow my feeling, and I felt like I wanted to paint this painting, and I do weird things with foreshortening on the legs, and I sort of my modernist approach tries to fold the figure into a canvas, and I use modern French painting 1920 kind of techniques to kind of do that, and I love drawing the figure and foreshortening, so it was really just an opportunity to express myself.
So this one is Like it's definitely a painting that kind of creates a pause
Yes.
in the exhibition.
Right.
So, and just like the self-portrait, which is the mind of the artist, this one is the hand of the artist. So what inspired you to make this work?
So one thing that I do in the studio is I watch a lot of documentaries, and I read books as well. And there's one favorite Guston documentary that he did, like when he's walking through his show that he had at the San Francisco Museum, like 6 months before he died, and he's walking through, and he said something that caught my attention, and he said that when people see his painting, that people look at it and say, this is something that has happened, is happening, or will happen. And I thought, what a lovely idea to think about a painting intentionally. It's all in all the painting, but to really think about it intentionally, give it a tense. So I was really into, the Renaissance kind of artist. So I lifted the Venezio Domenicano hand. That's, in a different position than the family. So I turned it. This is the real position, I think. This might be the family's a real position. I turned it around here, and then the painting, the hand on the bottom is from El Greco's last painting. I believe the Annunciation. You have, baby Jesus there, and you have 4 characters with hands around, and the space that they're creating around that figure is intense. It's like nothing can penetrate it. And what I was trying to do here is not only, wink, wink, nod, nod to those that are in the art world, what the sources were, because, I consider myself a postmodernist. I was in Pratt during the early 80s, when, that whole, like Elizabeth Murray, Julian Schnabel, David Sally, and, David Sally is somebody that I look at in terms of how he combines images, who's still doing it, because when you combine 2 things, you're really creating a third, no matter how you lift it or not. So I'm from that school. So what I was really trying to do was trying to create a puzzle for the viewer. When is this something that has happened, will happen, or no, is happening or will happen, which then connected me to the idea, which is like I have a whole kind of rap that I do that I'm hoping to squeeze in at some point today about the idea, and then I realized just recently, just a couple months ago, that the idea connects me to Marcel Duchamp, which is the other modernist branch coming out of 1902 to the modernist branch that I'm usually associated to, which then gave me license to do the Lincoln Road 500 and dance performance. But I really backed into that through Marina Abramovich, who was another hero of mine.
Oh wow, a lot of references.
A lot of references. There's a lot of references in my work. Yes.
Is that a match in your hand?
No, I was trying to figure out what to put in the hand, and so I decided to put something, look for a non-religious object. Like, I guess I would see it as non-religious, as a nail, but I guess somebody could see it as a religious object if they wanted to. And also that it had a point. So if you interact with it, if you don't catch it right, it's, may damage your hand, or you'll feel the experience. So it's, danger warning, or, if you're one with the universe, you're going to catch it on the way down without an issue.
So just kind of moving through some of the other images so everyone can see, just the use of color and line and composition in the works. And I wanted to see if we could find, as we move through the painting that elicited the powerful response earlier.
So while you're looking for it, I can talk about it.
Okay.
And so that name of the painting is called Ruthless. So like the family, there are certain times when I'm painting that I absolutely have to stop whatever I'm doing. And that happened with a family, that happened with this painting. That happened with another painting called The Moment, which is inspired by the George Floyd moment as well. And it happened with some others, I don't recall right now. And I call these the I Exist, Therefore I Am series. I feel that as an artist, in whatever medium one is, whether one's writing or cinema or painting, that that one has a responsibility to use their voice to communicate and codify a moment in time. And when the whole situation of choosing a new Supreme Court justice started, within weeks of the end of the presidency, I felt like I wanted to do an ode to Ruth Bader Ginsburg, and I came up with this painting. So this Ariella had come into the studio very early on, and so what I mean by I exist, therefore I am is that I have to basically stop whatever I'm doing, because I can't continue with my joy of life thing or my art historical problems that I'm trying to solve or looking for my voice in my painting until I get something out of the way. And also there was a lot of discussion with George Floyd and with what was going on in the family, and like I just say, well, this is my voice, I'm not, running for office or anything, but when I make a painting, it says that I am here. And it says that, this is from my perspective, one perspective. It's not a zero-sum game. It's my opinion versus somebody else's opinion, and I'm open to hearing that opinion. But the way that I structured this was the way that Goya structured his paintings. I had just finished the Robert Hughes Goya book several months before, and I saw the way that Goya composed his paintings. He used isosceles triangles to kind of set up the figure, and then which I really believe, because I work within the limitations of the geometry within a two-dimensional surface of the canvas, that I want to activate the images. And for me to do that, I have to find the coordinates of the painting. So I found the coordinates of the painting through isosceles triangles, and I have photographs very early on, because I wanted to create movement and dynamic and flow of everything. Everything that you're seeing regarding the figures is a combination of those triangles, and then I had to come up with a drawing. It took me all day to work it out on my, I have a special sketchbook for paintings, and then I worked it out, and this painting took me about 3.5 weeks to do. I can tell you some of the symbolism, or like some of my approaches, or what this painting means to me. I just don't want to be too boring and talk about what I think is interesting on this one.
Well, I mean, you're clearly, you're making a statement.
I'm making a statement.
And as you prefaced before, it's your opinion.
It's absolutely. And it's my opinion, and my opinion lives with other people's opinions.
Mm-hmm. And actually, as a side note, we were talking again after what happened prior to this this conversation, that artwork is a great way to facilitate communication, and that it's good for people to respond. We want people to respond, but we also hope that we can be thoughtful and calm,
right,
in our exchanges.
Yes.
And that's how we grow. That's how we,
and we exist in a peaceful society as well, when we can communicate, and we set great examples for our kids. I feel like the art of having different opinions is lost. Life is not a zero-sum game, and I think that even with the people that on the surface seem like I have so much things and so many things different from them, I know that really we're the same people inside. And there's a certain painting here called Voyage of the Hero, where all of my paintings about figures are really about two people coming together, but my Voyage of the Hero is two figures that symbolize one person, and it's the greatest struggle that we have as human beings, which is the struggle with ourselves and making sure that we are the best person. I'm trying not to use the word struggle, right? Make sure that we are the best person, and it is the challenge to master our ego and our emotions. That is where the greatest struggle is. And if we can master ourselves, I believe the world that we will live in is, we'd be much more constructive.
Is that image that you're describing in the?
Yes, it is. I'll tell you where it is.
I can look, because I'd like to share that. But I think it's wonderful, actually, to kind of scroll through it so we can see how beautifully these images move together.
There's an amazing flow
Mm-hmm.
as you're going through. It really is.
I sometimes wonder whether I use too much color, but I'm working on one painting at a time. So, and when I have paintings in my studio, I put them away, but sometimes they're out. I try to say, okay, I did blue on the background, and I don't want to make paintings that are all blue or all red, but I also choose a color. I always put a base color down that I'm feeling at the moment. I would paint everything red. Yes, this is the Voyage of the Hero. So all of my paintings in The Joy of Life are really two figures interacting with each other, and they're in some form of becoming one and negotiating a relationship, or celebrating life, and boundaries merge and they come together. They're two people as one people. But in this scenario, this is the only painting here that you have two people that are one person. It's called Voyage of the Hero because I'm a Joseph Campbell fan, another shout out there, and of a book called Voyage of the Hero, who he also says, because I've watched his documentaries and read his books, that the greatest voyage that we do have, is the battle against ourselves. And he also has an arc in terms of the way that he describes the Voyage of the Hero. You have the magical birth, you have the trials of leaving home, you have the struggles when you leave home, you have the becoming yourself and becoming an adult, and then you have the struggle to return home, and then you have the struggles at home. So it's kind of like an arc. We go out the same way that I left Miami, and I had my struggles in the world, and then I come back to Miami, and I'm not saying that I'm heroic, but it's all an arc that we're all assuming. And what I believe that this painting does is it's looking at my internal battle in terms of how I master my emotions, my anger, my love, my passions, and it's part of my constant evolution as a person.
So, getting a little bit more personal, because your spirituality,
right,
and your family and your very large combined family,
yes,
and how many altogether?
13 altogether now.
So there's 13 altogether.
I have 5 kids from my first marriage, and Ariella has 8 from her first marriage, and we came together.
And how many grandkids?
Ariella has the count.
And 6
6,
grandkids.
and that's all around. All around, okay.
So there's all this family energy.
There's
all this love. There's all this
yes,
passion. So how does because you're very spiritual. You practice Judaism very intently.
But
and so how does that kind of fit in?
Well, I would say that I'm very spiritual. I feel connected to the greater force all the time. I don't think that going to synagogue is part of, it makes a person spiritual, but I think how one is connected to the world and the universe is. So, I think it kind of comes out of the pore of everything that I do. I live in a world that's I live in this world and I live in my dream world. My dream world influences what I do, and I take my dream world seriously because it's intuitive, and I also feel, in the great spirit of my fathers and my forefathers, etc., that the universe, does talk to me. And when I see images in my dreams. Like there was a 20-year period or 23-year period where I did not have a studio practice, and I realized this week I wasn't communicating about that correctly. I always said that I didn't have a studio practice, or I wasn't painting, or I wasn't an artist. But like right now, like the main thing that I do is painting, and everything that I do fits around that, right? Make art. But before, I had real life things that I felt super honored and responsible to have in my life, and painting and art, which it was always there, fit those gaps. Mm-hmm. So the language that I'm using in terms of how I'm describing myself is kind of self-defeatist in some way. So everything that I'm doing, my work is both very physical driven, and also, very spiritual. So this is a painting that exists in the spiritual kind of world, in the mythological world. I think that we all create our own personal mythologies, and our own personal mythologies are not really new. They've existed before in one form or another, in one category or another. And it's amazing to be able to study them and know that we're just following a pattern of growth and self-realization in a really positive way.
Again, just getting back to the spiritual, because when I look at the work, and when, you and I were like talking about, your growth and direction, and I was, sort of poking around to see things that I felt made sense, in terms of your artistry. And I found myself looking at a lot of European work and a lot of artists that were like visionary and outsider artists that were really drawing from this well of spiritual energy and the sort of sublimated world.
Right.
And that's where I kind of felt the most parallel for you. So do you think when I made those references to you, do you feel like that
Absolutely,
was sort of,
yeah.
okay.
Like I feel myself, I feel myself as a French painter in Paris, 1918, as a, I wish I was in the Bateau Lavoir with, those bad boys, mixing it up, with Max Jacob, and having a spiritual reading by him, and, hanging out with Picasso and Fernand, but I take from that what I need, right? It's very safe for me. And also I love the artists that are not trained.
Mm-hmm. Well, you mentioned that, by the way.
I do. I really do. A lot of the work that I love is just so pure. And also I consider myself an art snob. And one of the things that I'm trying to do is break that out. So what I mean by art snob is I see a lot of art. Mm-hmm. And I love the history of art, and I love to sort of know, this painting was related at this time. Yeah, Peggy Guggenheim donated this Jackson Pollock painting to the Tel Aviv Museum when she was, paying for his paintings, and he was giving it to her before he was selling anything, right? Mm-hmm. I love to look at a painting and have that sense of history, but when I'm honest with myself, I'm not looking at art well that way. I'm looking at art well when I look at the piece and it draws me to it, and that's enough, Mm-hmm. And that's the same way with people, right? I'm mm-hmm. saying that when I don't put a label on a person and I can interact with a person, did I lose this?
Yeah, it's good. Working.
It's working? And when I can interact with a person,
no.
I think I lost that. I don't know what I did.
Is there?
Anyways, I've got the mojo here.
The button.
What button? No, the button's on. So, can everybody hear me? Because I just...
There we go.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. So when I'm looking at a person and I don't see their labels, that's, similar to what happened outside, mm-hmm. is when we connect. When you don't look at yourself, you're a so-and-so supporter, or you don't like, this kind of vegetable, or whatever you are, you're that clan and not this clan. we're not really seeing each other, and we're looking at each other through labels. And when I look at people, and when I look at art that way, even though I love to look at art that way because I'm an art historical buff when it comes to that's my life, it's not necessarily the best way that I'm looking at art. So in the time when art was filling in the gaps to my other life, I published a story in Two Coats of Paint. It's a site that Sharon Butler runs in New York that she decided to publish. It talked about mystery car rides of me taking my kids to the museum in that time. So what I would do with my kids is, go through the armor wing, first of all, because they all like to see the armor. And then we would go see the European paintings from the 18 and 1900s, because that's what Dad liked to do. Mm-hmm. And then we would go into a room, and then I would say to them, choose one painting you like, everyone, and then talk about it. And then I started to do that as well. So in a big room full of art, you choose one piece, and kids don't know anything about the history, so that's really pure. Mm-hmm. So when I'm not looking at the name of it, I'm looking at art much better. When I'm not looking at labels with people, that's kind of the ideal state.
Yeah, and it's interesting because like the image that we were looking at before, the hero painting, there's so much frenzy, and there's I feel a lot of heat in that work. I feel like there's a lot of heat and flames.
I was very angry when I drew it, and I was trying to work on myself really, really hard. And then I drew it it didn't have any preparatory drawing. I drew it on there, and then I said, okay, now I have this thing to deal with, and then it took me 4 months to complete.
But that kind of energy and eminence that comes from the work, and then in getting back to the idea of you mentioned in your artist statement that you decided that you wanted to unlearn the things that you learned.
I did.
And that's not the first time, by the way, that I've heard artists say that, because there's an artist that I work with, and he went to a graduate program, which I won't mention, and was pretty miserable there, but did his time, and said as soon as he finished, he just started doing everything the way he did before.
Right.
So I think that what you talk about, and you're both, again, you're just so warm and open, is looking at art through the lens of non-prejudicial thinking.
Right.
Which, you mentioned Joseph Campbell and the kind of getting back to the roots of humanity and
right.
Cave painting and all of that. That there's this kind of innocence that we need to train ourselves to own when we experience art.
Right, it's counterintuitive, right? Because we think the world, you think somebody treats you wrong, that you have to treat them wrong. And the biggest thing to do is to really master yourself and just realize that they're having a bad day. And
circling back to the incident
yeah,
earlier.
And they're having a bad day.
Oh, he was having a real bad day.
I was here. I was ready to accept I accepted his opinion, and I was willing to find where the middle ground, where the middle ground was. People say, you're so and so, and typical XYZ, and they go from what is it to slam the door behind you and not have a conversation. I understand if you don't want to talk about it.
Yeah.
But we lose the sight that we're all people and we have opinions.
That's true, and actually, a lot of things that have been happening. You mentioned, Ruth Bader Ginsburg, and obviously, maybe some of you recognize the figure of Donald Trump, and you talk about, George Floyd, and how that launched. So much dialogue, so much impassioned dialogue. And so what that has brought up for our society, so many things have come to the attention of the public because of art. It really has made a difference in our society. And whether people recognize that or not, it's pervasive. And it's been actually very good. It's made us all more mindful of the way we live our lives, the way that we think when we see people, how inclusive are we, how exclusive are we. So that's the power. Do you feel now that your show is almost coming to a close, do you feel good about the fact that you have impacted people through this experience?
I do, and most of the impact I will never know of, but I'm happy to know that exists. Also, like when I was studying art, I was always asking, what is art? And I thought it would take my entire life to figure that question out. But I answered it sometime in, a couple years after art school. And the answer that I came up with, which I'm okay in challenging it, but I haven't found a better answer, is that art is the way. It's not what you do, it's how you do it. It's, how you take care of your car, your interpersonal relationships, how you organize your drawer, the kind of little idiosyncratic things that we all do. And when I make art is like in a special kind of universe in itself. Like, why do you need art? And that was really the question that I had. The next question that I had, right? Like, why does art have to be this thing that's separated from life? Why can't I just organize my drawer and have great relationships and work on myself? I mean, that is part of the art experience, but there's an answer to that, which I do have, and that I found out through this show, doing this show, of why is art, and it happened through the "You're Worth More Than Your Weight in Gold" piece, which is related to the Lincoln Road 500, and related to Marina Abramovich, and it's related to Duchamp, and that is because art is an idea that has the potential to change the way we think. So that art, when you say that art is an idea, it becomes very powerful, and the question is, how do we harness that? Paintings, you have to go to a painting, but when you have a piece like "You're Worth More Than Your Weight in Gold" or the dance, it is in your face, and I'm trying to figure that out. That's really the next question that I have in terms of where I'm going. I mean, I will always paint, but I'm really passionate about that idea of, the idea of art and how can it inspire people to think or be more sensitive or love life more or love themselves more.
And I also think that the way that the artwork is displayed, and I encourage all of you to take the time to move through the hallway and experience the energy of the complete show, because there are many people that pass through that hallway every day, and I'm sure in their movements, in their goings-on, there's been an imprinting of these images.
I would agree.
So,
I would agree.
And your vision was so complete in that you wanted to encompass that.
Right.
And we were discussing prior to this, how we've really enjoyed it, and how we went with you.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
We wanted
you
to
let me be me, and I really appreciate that.
Yeah. So you weren't that bad a bridezilla.
Oh, really I felt towards the end I might have been a little bit. Danny knows.
You weren't unreasonable. Does anybody have any questions? Yes.
I would love to do sculpture, but right now it's this and brush and ink, and I'm moving into this kind of technology meets art meets statistics type of thing. What? I've done NFTs, yes. I'm following the crypto world very closely. I'm very excited by it for the social possibilities that it has. I think we're right now in the crypto world where the internet was in 1997, so it's basically the Wild West, but there's huge opportunities that are going to change the way that we live and change the way that we think, and I really think it's transformative.
It's interesting. I don't know. I've been a little bit uncertain of it, but for some reason, I don't know why I had this revelation last night just standing at my kitchen counter, and I was thinking of the fact that, especially with currency, that, some of the things that are happening in the world, for example, in Hong Kong, they've frozen bank accounts and people are having trouble moving assets. And that, cryptocurrency, digital currency, and just the digital universe have a kind of ubiquitous quality to them.
It's transparent.
And also that it can sort of evade the political animal, right? Because it's happening outside the realm of that kind of, well, unless they shut down the internet, of course, then things can't move.
That happens in some countries.
Yes, but also with regard to art, for me, because I'm so object oriented and I'm so materially based in my thinking, but when I saw some of these NFTs that were encased in a vitrine, like when I saw NFTs within a box, I could objectify them enough to say I could own that. And then I thought to myself, everything is sort of moving outward. We do get frustrated with our reliance on screens and try and remember a day when we had nothing like that. But to be able to make the sort of ethereal into something that we can sort of have and hold is sort of an interesting idea. So that was my kitchen countertop revelation, that like maybe it's not, maybe it could be something, maybe there's something to it. Mm-hmm. But I definitely could see that your work could lend itself to NFTs.
I've done some NFTs. Like last year I did it very early on, I wanted to get my feet wet. I made some mistakes, but I did it, so I understand the concept. And yes, it's something that I'm very interested in. I do have an NFT project that I kind of wanted to do for my show here, but it just doing three things at once. Mm-hmm. I do have like an NFT project that's in the queue. And I just need to find the right opportunity to do it and, not force it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Anyone else have anything?
First of all, thank you very much. This is great. I don't know if anybody else has any questions, but I'll ask a question too. I would just say, like in response to what you just said, there also is something about the tactile, right, and engaging directly with the art. And I think that's something, on a lot of levels that you've given us here. Because some of the work, we haven't seen any here in the slideshow, but some of your work is also black and white.
It is, yes.
And it gives this nice, stark, I guess, contrast to
yes. Mm-hmm. Right, and we were sensitive to that when we were showing the show, because I'm always sensitive of overpowering with color. Yeah.
But I also just think that's a nice way of looking at, I don't want to say it's a nice way of looking at life, because life is not black and white, but also sometimes there is a dichotomy in life.
Right.
Yeah, there's back and forth, there's black and white.
Right.
It was a nice contrast, to everything else.
Right.
How purposeful was that?
Well, when we set up the show, I think it was purposeful. I think Ariella was curating the show for me, and I just put Mindy selected the show, right? We brought 80 paintings over. That's when you got the phone call. We have 42 in the show. And then, but Mindy made it all come together and sing and zing and whatever. But the selection and some of the early ideas were Ariella in terms of, painting the front wall, that purple, which is a very in color right now, right? And then having the wall of drawings there, and then laying it out. She was like my true confidant. Mindy just made it all sing, and it was great to have a knowledgeable, steady hand that we trusted. Because anytime we went into your gallery, we were always like in sync. Like I could see the art that you show. I love your eye.
Thank you.
Really amazing.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Yes. It does.
So are you able still to layer things and run things?
I am, but it all depends. Like I'm doing a certain kind of painting right now. Maybe, who's the guy that paints all the interiors really hot right now?
Jonas Wood?
Yes. It's kind of the way that he puts paint down right now. Right, and I love Jonas Wood. I love his work. In terms of little square things because of the way that I mix them. but it all depends on what I'm trying to do. In all of my paints, I mix an extender, and I mix, gel medium, because I want the paintings, I want the surface right now, that's the way I'm feeling, to be shiny. I want them to look wet. But if I really want to mess things around, like play with something when I'm painting a large canvas and I need to paint an area, I'll mix a lot more extender in it, and stops it from drying so quickly. And I could have it wet, manageable, movable for hours. And also, like, it thins it out a little bit more, so you have to do more layers. And I'm also, I have a friend a friend is a strong word, but somebody that I know very well, or James Sienna is an artist, and shows at Pace. He came to see my show I had in New York, and when he saw my show, he was saying about covering the canvas 4 times with paint. I think Stuart Davis is kind of, I love Stuart Davis's work. It's like something that he did. He was like very generous with his work, and it's something that that I think about. I want to go all in, and I don't want to be seduced by the sirens as I'm strapped to the front of the ship, to let go. So it really just all depends on what I'm doing. But right now I'm really painting, kind of color with color, maybe kind of the way that Impressionists did, and maybe a little bit the way Jonas Wood paints right now. And I'm what? They did, right? But the Impressionists also cared about the surface. And also what the light on the surface. They really weren't trying to. They were just looking at the light and putting it right down on the surface. So that's one thing that I really love about the Impressionists. When I did the Joy of Life, can we put the Joy of Life painting on? Joie de vivre. The Joy of Life painting, like I thought like an Impressionist when I painted the water. And I went out back and I looked at our water. I studied like Impressionism. I took so many photographs, so I have a lot of art, and then I do some further research on that, right? So I also do have a series of paintings. So one thing that I do like about my work, I have multiple series that I'm working on, not actively, but I'm not done with them. One of them is called Symbolist Landscape. I had a dream one Shabbos afternoon. I took a nap. And in my dream, I saw 4 figures floating in front of me. There was water. I saw the figures. I didn't know what it was. Next Sunday morning, I drew that night in drawings, and I went into the studio. And then I realized what they were when I made the painting. And they were fire, they were water, they were the figure, and it was Mont Sainte-Victoire, the mountain that Cézanne painted like over 20 times and drew hundreds of times. So anytime I have those 4 elements in a painting, it's a symbolist landscape. So this is not a symbolist landscape other than those 4 elements are there, right? And like right now I feel like I'm painting a lot like Cézanne. So when I'm putting my paint down, I really am, thinking in Cézanne. In my studio in New York, I have 2 chairs outside my studio. One is for Cézanne and one is for Picasso. Cézanne's always there. He's always there when I'm in the studio. Picasso shows up every once in a while, but when he shows up, it's a party, So, and I really feel when he shows up, and I know, Cézanne is like, Picasso let go of Cézanne, and I'm going to have to let go of him at some time too. And I'm looking forward to that moment, but it's going to be out of love, the same way you let your kids go, So,
Interesting. Yes.
Passion-wise, yes. I have more of like, what is the meaning of life type of things now, and I really want to connect more, and I'm always challenging myself. Is this my voice? Am I, I talked about the postmodernist tendencies that I have. Am I going to do something so I don't feel like I need to? because I don't believe anything is new. As in Shir HaShirim, the Song of Songs that King Solomon wrote, he said there's nothing new under the sun. Put that in the same category as Joseph Campbell. That's, I think, a universal constant. But when Jackson Pollock did his first painting on the floor, he had Lee Krasner come take a look at it, and he asked her if this was art, and I think that's really a great question. I think if I can get to the point and ask if that's art, I think I'm on the right path. So I don't know. It's like looking at a black hole, right? We don't really know, maybe up till recently, that black holes exist, but we see what happens around them, the gravitational pull. So it's the same thing. I know that I'm making art, but I want to get to a place of making not art, And I'm, like I'm saying, I've been around, I have, art history, I've been around in the art world on the fringes, and that's why, I'm not coming from nowhere, but that's why I also consider myself an emerging artist, because I'm really just, 60-year-old guy trying to break in right now. I don't know how that's going to happen, but all I know is I just need to spend time in the studio and look for things that are not art when I'm doing them.
Well, we have appreciated your art. That is clearly art and doesn't look like not art unless you want it to. But thank you so much.
And thank you for letting me talk so much.
Well, it's been wonderful. We've really enjoyed it. And thank you everybody who's watching.
I did have a list of thank yous I wanted to say because I really didn't have an opportunity. There was like 30 people that were on Team Benito. And obviously I mentioned Ariella, and I mentioned my parents and Mindy, and I mentioned Karen and Danny, and I also wanted to thank Nicole Casamento, who's my social media guru. If she's listening, I wanted her to hear her name. I wanted to thank Catherine and Dan McKessel, who also made us feel very comfortable here, and she's the one that connected me with Pioneer Winter, who allowed me to express myself like Jean Cocteau and Picasso did, and Perrault in whatever that year was, 1917. To the Lincoln Road 500 team, my son Moshe and Jalaye Williams. To my operations team, to Paul Tolles, Sean Deller, Cliff Batista. They handled all the backgrounds and all the setups. To Kanu, this magnificent photographer, artist that has been with me. He's been inside. To the interactive weight and gold piece, to Shani Holdenberger, who was the brains, and I think he's borderline genius. I think he is genius, but I need to talk to him more, who helped take my crazy idea, and we're going to be working on more things together. My son Ovadia, who did the front-end development of it. To David Mendelevitz, who came in clutch when we had to pull that piece together like a day before the show. It's really when it came together. To Holly Seeger, my web guru, and the Dance of the Drawings team, which is Pioneer Winter, Uri Kors, Olga Soretsky, Kayla Castellan, Ayan De La Cruz, Liz Lot-Pito, and Patricia Suarez. Thank you for letting me say all of those names.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thanks
Thank you.
everybody for watching.
Okay.